That's in the works. We prep the live feed. I did a test earlier and it works fine, so it should be good still.
Judge, can you hear me?
Hey,
Yes. Charles, can you please coordinate Cynthia?
Yeah, Cynthia, can you do a quick sound check?
Yes, Charles, I'm here.
I can hear you.
Okay.
And we can see you. And let's see, Marcus, you just got on. You're usually good. Do a quick sound check, please, sir.
Yes, Marcus is here.
Yes, sir. Roy, how about you?
I'm here.
Very good. All right, I believe everybody's on. Quick, in case you weren't on earlier, quick comment. Everybody, please, if you don't need to speak, if you're not going to speak for, oh, Brian, I don't think I talked to you yet. Brian, can you do a quick sound check?
Check 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So anyone that did not hear earlier, if you do not need to speak, you're not speaking, please keep yourself muted to keep the background noise down. And Terrell made a comment, if you're not part of the commission, do not unmute yourself unless you are requested to do so. And if you guys
and
are ready, I'm going to start by
yeah, and also I believe, Charles, you know, like if you are a commission member, Kerry, I don't see you. Are you there?
I'm here, Judge. I don't have video, but I am here listening and I can participate.
Okay, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Judge, are you ready for me to start?
Yes, sir.
And bring the live feed up. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Fort Bend County elections meeting, duly posted today, Friday, December 18, 2020, 1:01 p.m. And actually, I call to order this meeting at this time, and then I will pass it on to Madam Clerk for a roll call.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, I'd like to conduct a roll call of our commission members to confirm our quorum of participants. KP George, County Judge.
I'm present.
Carrie Surratt, Tax Assessor Collector.
Present.
Myself, the County Clerk. Linda Howell, Republican Party Chair. Linda, can you say you're present?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, here.
And Cynthia Ginyard, Democratic Party Chair. All right. All right. I think you're muted, Cynthia, but.
Cynthia, you're muted.
Present.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let the record show that I, Laura Richard, County Clerk, am also present and taking minutes of this meeting. In addition, I'd like to confirm our ancillary attendees. Elections Administrator John Oldham.
Present.
County Attorney Roy Cordes, Office Representatives.
Present.
District Attorney Brian Middleton and Office Representatives.
We're present.
Information Technology Director Robin Doughty.
Present.
From time to time, other county officials will be asked to identify themselves as the matters arise that impact their respective offices. For clarity and recording purposes, please identify yourself each time you speak. Thank you, Judge. Judge, you're muted.
Item number 2, take all appropriate action to review and analyze the Fort Bend County 2020 election and administration cycle. And because this is an information item, I don't think we need a motion or second to have a conversation. County Attorney Roy or Marcus, can you confirm that, please?
Agreed.
Okay. So with that, we will move on to the discussion item. I would like to invite John Odom, our Fort Bend County Elections Administrator, to provide a brief overview of 2020 election cycle. Thank you, John. Please go ahead.
Well, we actually conducted 6 elections in 2020. We started out with a special election in January, did a primary, did a very small election, a couple of small jurisdictions in May, primary runoff in July, general election in November, and a runoff election in December. We used new equipment for the first time in July. We had hoped to use it, voting system. We had hoped to use it in the primary, but could not because we couldn't take delivery because we had no place to put it. We were unfortunately couldn't use it in May because we didn't have an election or a major election. Used it in July. So going into November, most of our folks had not had much experience with this system. We also implemented a new poll book for November, which was largely designed to minimize conversation between poll workers and voters so that they could make choices and provide information on a touch screen, and also to minimize physical contact between ink pens, paper, so on and so forth. So we in November, actually in the runoff in August, we had the biggest turnout of any county in the state, not just percent, but also total number of voters. In November, we had at least among the larger counties, we had the 3rd highest percentage turnout of any county. We had nearly 100,000 more people than had ever voted in an election before in Fort Bend, and 100,000 more than had ever voted early in Fort Bend.
Okay, and also I just wanted to remind our participant, one of the reasons, I don't know how often any one of you attended an Fort Bend elections division or Fort Bend election administration meeting in the past. One of the reasons I decided to call this meeting because I believe this election cycle, we learned a lot of stuff, and we definitely should have a conversation about what we learned, how we can improve, and moving forward, how we can implement a election system in Fort Bend County to the full faith up to the full faith of our citizens, because it is so important. We are living in a very different world, very different atmosphere, and there is a lot of trust issue. And so that's why we are just looking through this whole election experience. And I was, and also many of the people participating in this meeting was directly involved with that. And so we will move from here. And next, I will invite our information technology IT director, Robin Doty, to provide an overview of IT's involvement and issues or good things you have noticed this election cycle. We like to hear both from you, Robin, and please go ahead, Robin.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Judge. So on October 13th, IT became involved with assisting with providing election support. And on that date, we started out with about 28 individuals that we deployed to 30 early voting locations to update some of the files on the elections computers. We then started support on October 16th through the end of early voting. A lot of the issues that we noticed were kiosks were dropping out and losing connections. And that was because of the technology that was involved. It was using Bluetooth technology. And what we found is that there was a lot of interference based on either voters' cell phones, or it also could have been related to just the building infrastructure for each of the polling locations. We, throughout the entire early voting timeframe, we worked to triage all of the issues and resolve all of them. We utilized my service desk probably almost the entire IT department. We assisted with elections, with maintaining everything and making sure that it ran a little smoother. Leading up to November 3rd on election day, we encountered a few more issues early morning where equipment wasn't set up properly. So the team, my team worked with the vendors to get that set up, as well as the elections administrative staff. We found that during this whole process, there were 393 service desk tickets that were created. And a lot of those were either equipment issues or user issues as well. As John mentioned, there wasn't much training ahead of time and the ability to test out the equipment and look at it before going into this major election. And so some of the poll workers weren't familiar with it. The equipment itself just had issues with connecting. So we would make fixes, resolve all of those issues, but then it would reoccur. And that's all I have now, Judge, unless you have some additional questions that you'd like me to address.
Yeah, and there are questions. We are going to have questions, and also other members who participated in it also going to have questions. And you mentioned you started getting involved on 13th of October. You're saying you're not involved in it before?
No, we have never been this involved. The elections administration has their own team. The involvement from IT has been, we've worked with their phone bank to get that established and set up, and any support that they may need, whether it's assisting with setting up laptops, that sort of thing. But elections administrator John's staff handled all of that.
Okay, so you are brought into it, you're saying, on 13th, because we have noticed it is maybe more than John's team can handle, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, beautiful. At this point, I will move on to Fort Bend County District Attorney's Office, and I don't know, Brian, I don't see Brian here, but, oh, yeah, I see you. Brian, or your representative, Brian, if you wanted to start talking about your experience and issues you were about to encounter and the solutions you found, and if you could talk about some of those issues, greatly appreciated. Please go ahead.
Okay. Initially we were engaged out of concerns and reports about potential interference with the elections. So we were already staged in a joint task force with the county attorney's office. And then with the events that transpired on the first day of early voting, we were inundated with concerns about voter intimidation, voter suppression. And so I requested that my public integrity division investigate it. There has been a report that has been created, and that should have been circulated to the commission members at this point. And it goes into detail of what we observed and what our conclusions were. I'll just give a brief overview of it, and then Therese Buse, who is our Chief of Public Integrity, can address the specifics. But essentially, there were a lot of equipment failures. There were logistical issues, there were technological issues that are detailed in the report. Without the involvement of the IT department, not really sure how successful these elections would have been. But with the collaboration from the different departments, things were salvaged and the impact of these failures were minimized. So the report concludes, or at least make some conclusions about next steps, but they should include utilization of best practices and further involvement of information technology department. Therese, you want to share your concerns here?
Actually, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the collaboration that happened, because that, in my experience, was unprecedented. The bipartisan Fort Bend County Voter Protection Task Force is what we.
Therese, would you identify yourself, who you are? Everybody know Brian. Please go ahead.
Apologies. My name is Therese Boos. I'm an assistant district attorney currently serving as the chief of the Public Integrity Division. And under the purview of my responsibilities, election concerns and election fraud fall.
Please go ahead.
So my report has been prepared. It's in writing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reviewing a lot of the content of that because I've been very specific in the report. What I would like to point out, though, is the involvement of the bipartisan Fort Bend County Voter Protection Task Force that came about as a result of some of the issues that we experienced. And again, this was a group that was comprised of the county judge's office, the county attorney's office. IT was very much in the middle of it, our office as well, and the elections office. And we worked very hard to try to anticipate issues and to deal with them at the front end rather than just responding after they happened. And one of the reasons we felt strongly about this group was because of the, very high level allegations of voter fraud that were anticipated without any basis in fact, which was creating a lot of tension within the community. One of the first things that the district attorney's office did was we committed 2 teams of 8 investigators. They were deployed to circulate during early voting and voting day. They were not assigned to be visible in the polling places. They were not actually in polling places. They supervised and monitored the exterior of the polling places and checked in periodically with the election staff to see if there were any needs. They were there to provide a quick response in the event that the election officials needed a police response. In fact, we found that they could respond much quicker than even local law enforcement in several instances. They wore soft uniforms, so they wore polo shirts identifying themselves, but not a very obvious visible police presence. They quickly became a secondary point of communication for the election officials at times when the equipment was not functioning or they felt that their communications directly to the elections administration were not being heard or received. They could relay those communications to the investigator staff, and we made sure that the connections were made. Both the county attorney's office and the district attorney's office assisted with providing legal education to the election staff as part of the, we were invited to assist with John Oldham's final election training of his staff. And at that point, we made sure that we had good phone numbers and contacts available for law enforcement and for county attorney office representatives. So we had the ability for elections office officials to reach out if they had any election law questions, any criminal law questions. And we also had numbers for the chief investigator and assistant chief investigator. We also, within our office, set up an elections hotline. Part of that was to assist the elections administration office. We know that they get slammed with phone calls during the election period. Our elections hotline, we logged in 53 calls that were substantive. These are not simple little relaying of information or connecting people with a correct phone number. These were 53 issues that we dealt with through our hotline. We also set up an elections complaint website. These were for criminal complaints, allegations. And we received throughout the election cycle a total of 49 criminal allegations. By far the largest number concerned voter intimidation this cycle and electioneering, denial of the right to vote, and we had 4 incidents of fleeing voters, which are people that come in to vote and fail to scan in their ballot as part of that last step of the new voting system, and they have left with their ballot in hand, which means their vote will not count. The Voter Protection Task Force also coordinated public communications with the Elections Office and the County Attorney's Office. We tried to deal with the fleeing voter situation by a very quick campaign to try to educate the public who had not voted yet to make sure that they understood about that last step of scanning in their ballot and then dropping it off. On October 13th of this year, commissioners approved the appointment of and the funding to provide for special peace officers. Those are fully uniformed peace officers who were to go into the polling places at the discretion initially by the Voter Protection Task Force. John Oldham provided the list of polling places during early voting where he felt the need was present for that law enforcement presence within the polling place. And each of the individual judges, the election judges, made those requests for special peace officers for Election Day. We had far more requests from the election judges than we had resources of peace officers to put into those assignments. So the need was definitely there. And again, these are the purpose of the presence was to prevent or preempt any potential criminal issues that might occur in the polling places. And again, this was an unprecedented election, at least in my experience, as far as the high level of anticipated incidences. A lot of the things that we looked at as far as the allegations, they are merely allegations. There was not probable cause. Some of them were just issues that needed to be talked through. For example, some of the electioneering complaints were absolutely legal activity. They were not improper. I think in some respects, our citizens had been hypersensitized to certain issues, such as voter intimidation. And so some of those complaints were actually not legitimate complaints at all. But we've worked through all of them. We have one currently open and pending. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere. But again, the presence, the visibility, the collaboration of the Fort Bend County entities involved with this election, I have to commend everybody for their work in preventing, because that's what a lot of this was about, was anticipating and being ahead of the problems. And I think Fort Bend County did a good job, an excellent job actually, of dealing with that. Thank you.
Beautiful. District Attorney Brian Middleton, I will ask you this. The reason the Commissioners Court approved the funding and also authorized to have uniformed peace officers, because there was credible reports from law enforcement agencies, from other law enforcement agencies, pointing out that it's possible disruption can happen. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Middleton?
Oh, yes, definitely. We had reports and bulletins that were concerning possible outsiders coming in to interfere with the election. We did have one episode at Hightower High School that involved a group that was in military vehicles. There was one allegation of assault, but we have not received any complaints of that. But there was a strong, heavy police presence at that demonstration, which I think probably kept the peace that day. But, you know, outside of that, you know, we were concerned mostly from outside groups coming into our area in an effort to interfere and cause disruption. So the whole idea of the task force was to preempt that, to deter that, and from all indices and that we have is that was successful. It was a regional effort to try to deter interference, and the region had very little interference of criminal activity during that time. So I would describe the efforts as successful.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Mr. Middleton. And at this point, definitely we get into a conversation, and any of our commission members wanted to ask question, this is the time. And if it is pointing towards certain person, if you could first either raise your hand, or if you wanted to speak, please go ahead, and then that person can answer the question. The floor is open now.
Well, I have a question.
Please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay.
Is that towards who? Who you're?
Linda Howell. Okay, so thank you for the work that you have done with this. I have noticed that the word bipartisan has been used several times. I personally, as chair of the Republican Party, can't say I experienced that. I felt like the county judge's office very much made this a one-sided focused election without having both parties participate. That's one thing. I heard from back from several judges. They were very intimidated by the task force, that their weapons were visible, and they were asking questions beyond their authority.
Okay. That's more like a statement, I guess. Correct?
Well, it's a question. Why did that happen? And second, I guess the second question is, I was told that the county judge, the task force at Freedom just would walk into election polling places. And that is a violation of election law.
So you're asking me, why did I go to the polling places? Is that the question?
Roaming the polling places, yes.
Okay. I will defer that question to Roy, Marcus, or Justin. Is that against the polling laws? Is that correct?
Well, can I say something? In your Democratic chairwoman, I visit the polling. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Go ahead, ma'am.
Visit the polling locations every election. What we did for November 2020 is nothing different. I've been chairwoman of Democratic Party since 2016. And I want everybody on this panel to understand that John and I and the elections office have worked well together over these past 4 years. I feel that John is very competent in the knowledge and execution of his job. We have collaborated when we agreed, when we disagreed. So we come here with a journey of a good working relationship. As far as visiting polling locations, I have done that every election for the past 4 years. That is nothing new. As a chairwoman, I need to have a pulse of what's going on. So when a voter calls me and says, Cynthia, this happened there, and I'm like, okay, I need to know what that looks like so I can understand what the person is telling me. So I just wanted to speak to that particular issue. I certainly have more, questions more to say, but I wanted to speak to that issue of visiting polling locations.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
As
And
taxpayers, we have that right and responsibility to do that.
And if I may respond, this is Therese Boos again. If I may respond to the presence of the investigators checking in with the election judges. During the first 3 days of our involvement with the election, there was a lot of poor communication happening between the polling places and the elections office due to the equipment failures. And we tasked the investigative group with looking to see the number of people that were in line so that we could provide that information back to the elections office to update the program where citizens should have been able to go on board and online and take a look and see how many hundred people were in line ahead of them. Maybe they should wait to the next day to vote. That was not functioning well during the first 3 to 4 days of early voting. Our investigators were asked to touch base with the elections officials in everyone. They rotated amongst all of them throughout Fort Bend County, checking with them to see if there were equipment needs that could then be communicated quickly back to John Oldham's office as well as IT. And that was all they did. They literally walked into the polling places, checked with the elections officials, got their information and left the scene unless they were asked to stay to deal with something. They were there to de-escalate any potential problems with voters, which we do have periodically. And that was their presence. They were checking in and they were leaving, and they were doing that at request of the task force for a very specific reason. That contact became less necessary as things got back on board equipment-wise and communication-wise. And at that point, we slowed down the numbers of contacts. But every polling place had an investigator who checked in at least once a day with them, if not twice a day. But that was it. That was the presence.
Well, actually,
if I may, Ms. Howell, Justin Pfeiffer from the Fort Bend County Attorney's Office, to add to what Ms. Boos said, when we trained the election judges and the presiding officers for the early voting period, we specifically took requests and asked if they did not want anyone to come and check in with them. And at least one person at the election day training said that, and we respected it.
yes, thank you.
okay. Any other? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, since this is the first election in Fort Bend County we've ever had a task force or people such as this from your administration into the polling places, it would have seemed appropriate to have informed both parties ahead of time and gotten input from both parties, if it's going to be bipartisan, that was going to happen.
Okay, your point is taken, and let's move on. Any other?
Judge, let me respond to that.
Yeah, please go ahead.
That's how I think that you're putting too much emphasis on the title of the Joint Task Force. It was described as bipartisan because Roy Cordes is elected as a Republican. I was elected as a Democrat. What you should focus on is what we focused on, which was the purpose and the necessity of what we did. And if you look at what was accomplished, you can see that it worked very well and served its purpose. So we wanted to ensure that everyone was able to safely and peacefully exercise their right to vote. And we also wanted to ensure the integrity of the voting process and to discourage any disruption in our voting process. So that was the purpose of it. The title of it being bipartisan really was irrelevant to the process, because as we do our jobs, we don't consider partisanship.
Right.
And also, I just wanted to add there the approval of funding this process and also allowing the peace officers was a commissioner's court approval item. It was approved bipartisan. It was a 5-0 vote. So I believe that is it is a bipartisan effort to do something like that. Yes.
Judge, can I add something before you
please go ahead.
That point?
Can those who are not speaking, if you would mute yourself? You know, we are getting some feedback. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Chairwoman Linda, I am your other half, if you will, when we speak to bipartisan. It was bipartisan because I was not informed either. Okay, I received no information. I knew that the court and our district attorney were taking an active role in that election because of all the complaints, allegations, and threats that had been received. As far as the Democratic Party, since those two are Democrat elected officials, I was informed, Cynthia, this is going to happen. No, ma'am. So I am in the same shoes as you were, in that I was not given any more information than you were given. So I would say it was taken from a county perspective, and I was not included in the plans to preempt their actions from being bipartisan.
Okay. And also I just wanted to specifically say, you know what, politically we could disagree. We are here to talk about the election, and we will continue that conversation. If any other member do have any question.
Yes, I have.
Judge, may I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Roy Cordes, County Attorney. And what I wanted to clarify and maybe add some emphasis to is what you've said and what Brian has said, is that there were credible reports from law enforcement agencies about possible disruptions or voter intimidation. We all heard those reports and were made aware of them. Mr. Middleton had the idea of forming the task force, which we willingly participated in, because we all shared the same goal to make sure that the elections are conducted fairly, accurately, and without any intimidation from anyone, and to monitor that situation. That was the primary goal going in. The county attorney's office, we didn't have the resources, but we did furnish an investigator to work with the district attorneys, investigators, and Mr. Pfeiffer was assigned virtually full-time to work on election issues with federal and state, and also train with Teresa the election judges and answer questions and be an available resource to Mr. Oldham. As John said earlier, and I think everyone else has acknowledged, this really is an unprecedented election in terms of Fort Bend County, in terms of voter turnout, percentage-wise, and in absolute numbers. And we also we recognized we had an entirely new system that we were dealing with, that we had to learn. But we all work together. The collaboration word has been used a lot, and I think justifiably so, because we all work together to make the election work as easily and as well as possible.
And Justice, I may add something to echo Mr. Cordes. Justin Pfeiffer from the County Attorney's Office. One of my other roles as well was to coordinate with other counties. And so in particular, which the Commissioner's Court approved of regarding election issues in general. And we, being the County Attorney's Office and the District Attorney's Office, worked very collaboratively with Harris County regarding issues that were common to both, since the districts bleed into each other so much at so many points. And we were also privy to various security-related information and their security task force, so that we could best assess our security-related risks.
Okay, thank you. And I have a number of questions to ask our election administrator, John Odom. John, I just want, the word used to hear is unprecedented. Indeed, it was unprecedented election. We have 359,881 people voted. The last one was 257,000. So it was an unprecedented election with participation and things of that nature. And we never had 73.6% participation in Fort Bend County. It never happened. So John's office and everybody participated, did an amazing job. That's the only reason why we were able to pull that together without any problem. With that, John, you coordinate a lot of stuff there, but do you believe, is there anything we could have done differently to make this, election cycle more smoothly, to conduct a little more smoothly? Yeah, I hope you understand my question.
Well, I was out and doing public meetings telling people this was a train wreck waiting to happen. We understood this. Now, the first day we shot ourselves in the foot with our poll book. However, we would have had lines regardless of that. I got to the office at about 6:15 on Monday morning, and we already had 300 people in line at this building. And that was largely because folks pay attention to the media in Houston, which was reporting Harris County's times and not our times. And we weren't alone in that. Chambers County had the same problem. Galveston had the same problem. Brazoria had the same problem. People showed up 2.5 hours sometimes before the polls were going to open. And then we add to that the issue with our poll books. And again, that wasn't the poll book failure. That was our failure. We did not update. We think we're ahead of the game, and we started working on this election the day after the runoff and entered the dates for early voting. And then a few days later, the governor changed those dates, and we didn't go back and change that in our system. We were also caught off guard by the cross-pollinating of kiosks. And, we really didn't have a long time to vet that stuff and test it. We tested it to see that it worked, and it worked pretty well, but not in an environment where we had a lot of them running. We also got behind due to ballot by mail. We had unprecedented numbers. We wound up with over 40,000 people applying for ballot by mail, which is more than twice the number we'd ever had before. During the process of doing this, we had to start over again, throw away about 9,000 ballots that had already been folded, about half of which had been folded, stuffed, and ready to go. So we had to redo all that. And when we did that, we also have to retest. Now, our first testing of the system or the coding, because we have so many minor political subdivisions on the ballot, took us a week. So we can't just make those changes and start firing ballots out. So that cost us basically a week. And then the suit involving the Straight Party, which didn't go anywhere. I mean, it was overturned. We expected it to be overturned, but we delayed things 2 more days just to make sure we didn't have to throw more ballots away. Due to the size of this ballot and the fact that we had so many political subdivisions on it, we had to go with about as small a font as we could and be readable. And that meant that we could not run, and it was a 17-inch ballot, we could not run those ballots through a folding machine because they have enough variation that if you fold into a target area, it can create an overvote situation. So we had to fold 39,000 ballots by hand. Those are all not small tasks, and they take away from other things that one ought to be doing. We had to employ a lot of temps in there, some of whom were very good, some of whom were worthless. It was a challenging election in a whole lot of respects. We've had more poll workers than we've ever employed before. We had nearly 600 people working. And that's one of the things I tell folks sometimes, particularly voters who call and say, well, your poll workers don't, you need better poll workers. doing an election like this is kind of like you open a store for one day and you have to hire 600 workers, or you employ 600 workers, but you really don't get to hire them because they're provided by the parties, or they're hired by the individual judges. So it's to be able to train those people is a challenge. We gave every one of them at least 4 hours of equipment training and protocol training on COVID, which also took away from things. So, I think we did we did the steps we needed to do. However, because this was a new system to us, things we know now that we will train differently on going forward.
Okay, John, and also I just wanted to say here, there are 2-3 examples of, I call it lack of planning or not having a backup plan. One was some response we got it from some of the poll workers, communicating with your office, not getting a timely response, one, and not planning to deal with ongoing check-in machine issues. And if it, thank God for IT to step in, but before IT was not informed, or you did not coordinate with IT department. And then on election day, I heard, you told me 1 or 2 locations, they couldn't open the polls on time because the election judge did not test run the machines the day before election. They came in the morning and, they tried to do certain things, didn't work. These 3 examples, in my opinion, is lack of coordination or lack of better planning. Do you have anything to say about it?
Well, I'll speak to the second one first. We appreciate what IT has done for us. However, we've never really had any reason to coordinate with IT in the past other than a phone bank. And we did work with IT on our temporary phone banks. We had every phone available that they could get for us. Some old phones from other offices, but there's a lack of that stuff available. Hold on just and in years past, we've asked IT to give us some help, and sometimes they're available and sometimes they're not. So we've never been really tried to be dependent upon them except for specific things. We've never done planning with IT other than maybe in voter registration areas and server issues, those types of things.
Don't you think when we are, installing or starting to work with the kiosks, and this is a whole new voting system. This is all about like IT related. It is small computers sitting there. It's only common sense to just coordinate with them, because the reason I say that, October 13th, we realized things are not going in the right direction, and I have to make that phone call to IT. And overnight, Robin put together a task force of, I think, approximately 20 people. They came on board, and obviously there were still hiccups, but they were working 24/7 to make these things happen. I tell you, if they were not there, this would have been a disaster. And that is my thought in that. And I understand in the past, maybe you were not able to, but that's why we have to look forward to what we are dealing with. And also, how do you explain election one? Again, this is not, I'm saying anything bad about our election workers. They predominantly, they did an amazing job. And, we are talking about 1 or 2, a small percentage of people. And I'm very thankful to those people who put their time and effort. And so this is not about saying all election workers. I just wanted to be clear. But don't you think we should have a system in place, especially when you're dealing with a new, the whole check-in system and also voting machine? They should have test run that day before.
Not necessarily. There you get issues. We allow them to go in and do some setup. However, they should not be opening those poll books. They should not be turning on voting equipment unless the bipartisan representation is in place. Some of it, legally, they just shouldn't. They can't turn on till election day. We made a mistake in our end and I'll admit to that, but by testing the poll books, but by not testing them, we tested them in a test mode, which is the system that's designed to do this. If you test them in the live mode, I'm going to be checking in KP George or Brian Middleton, and then if we fail to uncheck those, then you show up at the poll. So we do it in a test mode that does not communicate with our servers. And that's the only way we would have caught the date issue. We tested the way we've always tested. So we're going to have to test differently going forward. That's a lesson learned. Our poll workers, I think, did a good job. We did training starting immediately after Labor Day. We did, in some cases, we ran well over 60 classes for workers. There were a minimum of 4 hours each. We, up to a point, we kept doing that. We trained workers up till the Sunday before, or even the day before the election, to replace some that got sick or who somebody on their team got sick. We had to deal with the pandemic, obviously. We were fortunately during the runoff election, we don't believe anybody got sick at a polling place. We're not aware of anybody getting sick on election day at a polling place, but we took a lot of steps to do that, and that was a huge distraction. We were spending a lot of time trying to acquire PPE, come up with plans for how to deal with things. And again, could have we done better? Yeah, we probably could have. But again, I think that by and large, our workers did a good job.
Okay. No, there is no doubt they did. And another question I have here is when we talk about few trouble location, one happened to be Bowie Middle School. We had numerous elected, people were also candidates were there. I got numerous calls from there. And another location, we got, pictures and things like that. Hightower High School, they moved their location to an elevated a court, is a basketball arena. And so when I talked to you about it, you said you didn't know where that they moved that location. And then initially, I have to make that phone call because other elected members or other community leaders went there and they thought it is not fair, and it is more like a some voters cannot walk 33. I counted 33 or 34 steps. So I feel like this is also kind of a lack of coordination coming from elections office. Is there any comment on that?
Yeah, there is comment. We are guests in these polling places, and where we typically voted at Hightower, which is not a good location, but it's a necessary location. On Friday afternoon, I found out that the school wanted to move us to another building. The equipment had already been delivered to the lobby of the school. The school was gracious enough to participate in moving this to the other facility. And I was told there were a few steps. I wasn't able to go down there and look at it. We found out on Tuesday that there was the first day that there was more than a few steps. We communicated with Rob Scamardo and with about trying to find something different within the school, as you did as well. So they eventually moved us to a gymnasium, shut down that gymnasium except for us. I will have to say the Fort Bend ISD tried to go out of their way to be helpful and balancing their concerns with student safety. That was one of our issues in Bowie. They moved us in Bowie and didn't tell us. They thought it would be better. I don't think it was. I think we would have been far better off in the hallway where we typically are, where we didn't have distancing issues as we did in the room where they put us. So these are things that are somewhat where we go into school and how much space they make available to us is beyond our control. We are guests in these facilities.
Okay. And see, again, my thing is, maybe, you should know exactly what is going on. Coming back to another question is mail-in ballot issue. we have numerous, complaints coming from Missouri City area. They're saying their city election is not printed on their ballot and things of that nature. You initially mentioned about that. But can you clarify, because see, first of all, it was so polarized that mostly we were running this election. There is a lot of mistrust out there. People don't trust each other anymore, or they trust government anymore. And, so any of this stuff is sending a wrong message to the citizens who is looking to vote. And another thing I will tell you, one more thing I will add it to that. Coming back to this runoff election, and that people went to vote, maybe coming from the small part of Harris County, and your people looked it up, their name, and they said your name is not in the voters list. Instead of telling them, hey, please go to the other location, we don't have it. That created a lot of confusion, and and also, John, understand, people, always the party chairs and also the elected members, the people think they are close to them and they make all these phone calls, and we get all these questions and concerns. So what is going on there? Can you please briefly address that?
Going back to the November election, we knew that we had some temps. Now, I didn't know it because I was out of the office that whole day. I was at a press conference at Smart Center and then in a meeting for several hours in Brian's office. So when I got back to the office about 4, I'm told that we had to get rid of 3 temps that were working folding ballots because they're stuffing them wrong. So we had gone back and pulled everything that these people had done, essentially, and reopened them to make sure that they were right. They cleaned up a few things and decided everything was found. Again, we were 10 days late mailing ballots. We mailed out ballots, and on Sunday, I got a call from Cynthia Ginyard saying that somebody did not have Missouri City on their ballot. So Monday morning, we start researching. And the way we do this, we do it in batches by style. So we were sure we had this limited. It was limited to 26 voters that were mailed the wrong ballot. By 10 o'clock, we had new ballots in the mail to them with a letter of explanation. We also notified the city of Missouri City, which was unaware of that. We also mailed to another group of voters who apparently did receive the right ballot, but we wanted to make sure that they did. So again, these are things that happen, and it's happened to us before. It happened all over the country. It's not they happen, particularly when you have human error and you have temp workers having to do things. And you're 10 days behind in doing it. On the Missouri City issue, apparently there were 4 voters on Monday morning that were turned away at Stafford. We don't know what happened to those voters because the voters never called us. They supposedly called Missouri City, but Missouri City doesn't know who they were. They did not get any names for us. So we do not know who they were. We didn't know if they'd voted or not. It's quite possible they left there and went to Missouri City City Hall. But we did not know because we don't know who they were.
John, the issue I am talking is your staff at Stafford didn't know what to tell them. That is what I'm trying to say. Because it was simply, they could have said, hey, only one location you could go and vote because you're not from this county. That would have completely solved the issue. And this day and age, when you go to vote and you know that you have a vote and your election worker is saying your name is not on the list, that freak out people. That is the point we are trying to make. And that is again coming back. Your staff should have known to communicate with these people. I mean, whether it is 1 vote, whether it is 100 votes, it doesn't matter.
Well, our staff did not even know this was occurring. It was the poll workers, because the poll workers didn't report it, and neither did Missouri City, nor did any voters. So when we found out it was happening, we dealt with it. But Our staff.
Yeah, but don't you think they should report to you? This is a serious matter, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it's not.
Yeah, but all I'm trying to say is that this all kind of creating confusion. And coming back to the first the first day, the people couldn't vote, early voting October 13th, because the voting machine was not updated. And you said you accepted it is a fault, happened from our side. But John, you know that if you work in a corporation, and if I work in a corporation, maybe I could accept it, but maybe I don't have my job there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if we were coordinating with IT department and they are more experienced in launching products, launching software, they always dry run it, and they always trial run it, all that stuff, making sure everything is looking good. And so I'm just making a statement. It is simply because we did not coordinate with the IT department. That was the reason why that happened. And again, that is something, that's what I learned. And also going back to, a couple of more things. I will basically, I'm just saying, I see all across the board, there is because what happened in lack of communication or not properly planning, because see, our county was only, I went and looked at the record 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we only had like 250,000 voters in Fort Bend County, and now we have 400, we are almost about to touch 500,000. So in my opinion, what is happening is we are not, probably, that's my thought, you could correct me if I'm wrong, we are not updating our mind saying, hey, we are dealing with a much bigger crowd here, we have to be better prepared. And if it is up to me, I will bring all the resources available together so that we could avoid all those problems. And use talking about 393 tickets, IT department how to, whether it is small or big, IT department how to deal with it. That is a lot of tickets you're talking about during that election cycle. And so I would say, it is where do we go from here? What we learned, in my opinion, I like to hear what we learned from all this. And understand that one more thing I wanted to say, when we had delayed voting start, I got phone calls from New York Times, CNN, and ABC, and Washington, D.C., and all these people wanted to know what is going on in Fort Bend County. The issue is, all I'm trying to say is that, yeah, maybe it is not a big deal issue, but it is a PR nightmare. And that's what I'm trying to say. So hopefully we could avoid these kind of issues in the future and using the resources available. That's my point. And now I know I've been talking for a while, so now I will open it up. Any further question from anybody?
Well, oops, go ahead, Linda.
Please go ahead. Who wanted to speak?
Linda
please identify.
Spoke first, so I'll wait.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, from my perspective, what I heard was that the election administrator's office was inundated by meetings, attacks, and questions continually. So possibly that kept them from doing their job by you and other people is the first thing. Second, I feel like this is to attack the elections administrator and his office, which I think is wrong. I fully give my support to John and his team because they're impartial and they did a good job. There were problems, but there are going to be problems. Obviously, if we have the highest voting participation of either anyone in this state or the top 3 counties, there was not voter suppression. So I resent that you're trying to make our election administrator and this office was incompetent.
I have answer for all that, but I will go to Cynthia. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Okay. All right, everybody can hear. Linda, you said we're at a point where there are going to be problems. I vehemently disagree with your position on that. That's what we're here for. That's what these people are elected for, are hired for. You make plans and troubleshoot, and you don't wait until you get slapped in the face. You move your face out of the way before the slap comes. So it is up to us, all of us, to be proactive. We know that the voting process or the voting participation has changed, and I'll dare say it will not be any different in 2024 when we have another major presidential election. So we already know we're going to have this same kind of thing. We're going to have problems? No. We're going to sit down and work through them and involve everybody. Someone may think of something that the other one hasn't from their perspective, from your perspective, and we're going to make this process as smooth as we can. We had several issues, so some things we know we have to fix. I do believe at this point, based on the participation that we had, and we knew it was going to be big. Okay, we knew that, the voting was it's just the political climate. So if no one here knew that, then you need to take your head up out of the sand. All right?
Yeah.
And
also, I just wanted to add this, you should be thankful we could discuss this. Ask somebody, when was the last time in Fort Bend County we had an election commission meeting? Did any one of you attended one? So we are trying to have this conversation instead of attacking each other. Let's talk about it so that we could find a better solution next time. That's all it is. We need to find out what is going on. It is important to work. And also, I just wanted to say this. I did not even looked into the election until October 13th when all this happened. And so John is not the one got the call. Ask Brian Middleton, district attorney sitting there, and so many other elected officials, irrespective whether they are Republican or Democrat. And they all got the phone calls. And so that is where we realized we need some kind of a plan to moving forward. If you feel that was not inappropriate, and you know what, you are entitled to your opinion, and I appreciate your opinion. Let's move on. Do you have any other questions?
I'm not finished. May I finish?
Oh, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. So having said all of that, and including what you, Linda, and what the judge has said, it only stands to reason that we've reached a point where we cannot operate as we have in the past. We have to make changes. We have come across a pivot point. What the elections office in and of itself has to do now is so much thicker and so much more encompassing than what they've had to do. Then I feel like these technology issues, I didn't know the county had a boom technology department, so to speak. I thought they had a tech person, okay, a technologist. I did not realize there was a department. Now that I am aware of it, then it needs to be meshed so that the elections office can do the things that it needs to do and quit having to worry about tech minutia. There are qualified, trained people to do that. And I would think that would be a welcome integration, because guess what? we've not grown in size, but we have grown in this election process. And you guys know that this is not going to change. Now, we had our new machines for the July runoff, and John in the office did a wonderful job. They had new machines, and who asked for COVID-19? And they had COVID-19, no one asked for it. They asked for the new machines, and they pulled that off. I mean, it was great. It was safe. People, everybody voted. The young people liked it. The old people liked it. See, I'm hands-on. I'm out there getting a pulse for what's going on when we are having elections. So our machines were not new. The poll workers, they had a lot more. They had a lot more in July because you had this extra process and all of that. I was very, very pleased. It didn't go quite so well in November. One of the things, now, of course, we know the machines weren't set. So just like anybody else, by 7:30, my phone was ringing off the hook. And I'm like, what is going on? So that was a problem that created other problems. And we've already talked about that. One question I do have was, I felt like we had enough poll workers. Many of them knew what to do. Some of them don't. But, John and I worked together for 4 years. We know we have worthless people out there sometimes, and we have to move around that. I felt like we didn't have enough intake pads. The new pad that we signed in on, which took 1 minute and to at least 1 minute, 60 seconds to process, and that's okay. The machine is the machine. I like that, but we did not have enough. Well, my first position was, well, gee, we just don't have enough, but this is early voting. And then it finally dawned on me, well, guess what? Yes, we do have more because we have election day coming up. Early voting is 30 venues. Election day is 80 venues. So I feel that, a place like Hightower, it votes off the chain all the time. A place like Bowie, not as big in physical structure, but a whole lot of folks go there. So some of these places had one intake pad, and that seemed to be the critical issue. It was not the voting machines. It was not the workers. Based on what I saw, that lack of enough intake pads was causing the issue. Now,
Cynthia, can I ask you this? Robin wanted to touch on this kiosk issue, and I'm talking about the check-in machine issue. Robin, do you wanted to, in between you mentioned something like you wanted to say something about it. Do you have anything to add to this conversation?
I do have a few points that I like to make, but specifically address the kiosk. I agree with you, Ms. Ganyard. From an IT perspective, I do not believe that there were enough kiosks allocated. I had 28 people that were going out to 30 sites that were stationed out at 30 sites for early voting, and they were stationed out there for election day as well. And so when you have the boots on the ground and you have people that are seeing the lines that are wrapping around the corner, you're realizing that there is one kiosk. And that's when we've contacted folks to ask if we can get more. And we've worked with John to get those put in place. But yes, I agree with you. There were not enough kiosks. And then when we would get some kiosks out there, more than one, oftentimes we'd have connection issues. So you'd have two kiosks that would kind of get confused and talk with each other or just drop off. We encountered that quite a bit. Go ahead. I'll give you an example. If you have Bluetooth enabled on your smartphone and you go into a polling booth, the workers may or may not notify you to turn your phone off. If you don't turn it off and you're a voter, that can cause interference with it potentially could cause interference with those check-in kiosks. So those are also issues that we encounter. Yeah.
See, I just wanted to say here. we had our first elections communication the night of October 13th. And then Robin's team was not involved with this business. And so at that point, I asked Robin to, come up with some kind of a solution overnight. Thank God she put together a task force of 20 people. And I just wanted to be very clear about that because Robin's team worked on that. That's the reason why we avoided a lot of issues could have happened. And so there is a lot of things happen behind the scene. I just wanted to let people know that maybe you see things from outside and say, oh, why is that? But there is a lot of things happened behind the scene. A lot of people worked behind the scene. That's the reason why we have a successful election here. I will ask Brian Middleton. Do you want to add something to it, District Attorney Brian Middleton?
Sure, Judge. I'd like to point out is that this process is about accountability. We had a lot of problems during this election cycle, and we owe it to the citizens of Fort Bend County to do better in the future. Anything that we've done during this process was a part of a collaboration, not to attack anybody, not to attack a department, but to support a department. And that's exactly what happened. If we had meetings, it was for collaboration. The meetings wouldn't have been necessary if the best practices were used. But fast forward, we're here now to talk about solutions going forward and making sure the next election cycle runs smoothly. We learned a lot. We know what the problems are. So it's time now to discuss strategy and solutions and moving forward. This is not a blame game. This is identifying problems and identifying solutions.
And also,
Judge, I'm not finished, so when you get a chance, I need to finish my
please go ahead.
Okay. So those were the things. Like I said, it was the intake process that was really causing a problem. And folks, for those of you who may not been involved in elections previously, close up, we have issues all the time. It's not a perfect process. We are back and forth. What about this? John, this person complained about that. No, Cynthia, it's not that. Send me proof, John. Okay, all right, here it is. It's not a perfect process, and I don't expect one. The runoff election for the city of Missouri City, which we work Harris County. We have 13 precincts that we do double Dutch with, you all, as I call it. What do you mean by double Dutch, Cynthia? We have 11 precincts in Fort Bend County who are the city of Houston. We have one precinct in Fort Bend County, is the city. And we have one precinct in Harris County that is the city of Missouri City. I did not make a mistake in what I just said. The double Dutch is in effect all the time. One county, another city, one city, another county. One particular precinct, precinct 506, which is Harris County, city of Missouri City, did not receive their ballot by mails. The voters called and started calling saying they didn't get it. And it's like, and I said, call the elections office, make sure you the runoff ballot box because there is one. And if you didn't check it off, then they may not have sent you one because of that. Well, they say, well, we got one in November. I'm like, troubleshoot it anyway. They did. Once they found out that they had checked the box, they couldn't get a good response as to why they didn't get their ballot by mails. So you have to remember, this is the oldest part of before Missouri City was the Missouri City that you know. So these people have been around for a long, long time. So they started going to their neighbors. Did you get yours? You should have got you. And that's when we realized no one got them. As a matter of fact, I believe the quote was 387. Ballot by mails went out prior to early voting. Early voting started November 30th. These people discovered that they had theirs, they didn't have theirs. I reached out to John, the mayor reached out, yada, yada, yada. They went in on Saturday morning and to them. They got them Monday. All other precincts in the city of Missouri City had 3 weeks to get their ballot by mails in. Particular precinct had 5 days. And as you well know, some people don't even go through their front doors. So some probably are still out there because they just haven't gone. Intentional, accidental, overlook, it's all voter suppression. I cannot digest that. I'm gonna speak out from sea to shining sea with whatever backlash I have, I will take it. I cannot support voter suppression by commission or omission. The journey has been too long. That can impact a vote. I know if I'm the matriarch or the patriarch in the family, if I haven't talked about going to vote or sending my ballot in, well, probably the rest of my family isn't going to do it either. So you're talking about more than 387 votes in reality. I am a pragmatist. I live in a real world, not by the books. So I have some real misgivings about that. And they are so giving until I don't even think I should say it, and I won't. That happened to be the precinct that the sitting mayor lived in. And that happened to be the precinct that carries that mayor over the mark. Those are stated facts. I won't make any assumptions. I will. Yes, Linda.
Just finish the statement. Cynthia just finished the statement. We will come back to Linda. Finish it up.
Okay. And so I don't care who you vote for when it comes to voter suppression. I don't care if you don't vote at all when it comes to voter suppression. But no one can be denied equal access to vote. That's my point. I don't give a rat's tail if it's Democrat, Republican, or independent. You have the right to vote. If you don't go vote, that's your business. If you vote Democratic, fine, I'll be happy. You vote Republican, fine, Linda will be happy. If it's nonpartisan, whatever. But I cannot tolerate people being denied their equal access to vote. And they were not, and you're talking about a precinct of 1,000 people. It wasn't equal access. And that's the issue I take.
Okay. Thank you, Cynthia. Your point is well taken. I will go to Linda Howell and then we will,
Judge, may I address Linda?
Please, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I realized on a Friday afternoon that obviously we had not sent out enough ballots to that precinct. We'd gotten some calls on Thursday. My staff's thought was that it was, hey, we're dealing with people who didn't mark annual. On Friday morning, we get a few more calls, so I start looking into this, and we have to do it physically because we don't have these in our voter registration system because they're Harris County. I looked and I found, there's not enough applications here. That to me, there ought to be a lot more. So we cannot get these applications. Harris County has a portal where political subdivisions can go and download their ballot by mail apps. We didn't have access to that. Stafford does, Pearland does, Missouri City does. And for example, Stafford downloaded theirs and sent to us. I spent an hour on the phone with 9 different people from Harris County, and it was kind of chaotic because they're transitioning to an EA. Finally found out that they had about 340 or 440 voters. That they gave me a list, not the apps. We had to get Missouri City to go in to get those apps for us. But it's the law basically says it's Harris County's responsibility to send those to Missouri City, and Missouri City's responsibility to send them to us. Yeah, I wish we'd reminded Missouri City or we'd asked them, but in the scheme of things, when we're sending out 5,000 ballots, you don't know what you don't know. You don't realize you're missing these from a particular precinct. But we got the list. I went through the list and compared it to the poll book and culled out about 60 names of people who are no longer in the poll book because moved or died or whatever, remembering that these apps are filed beginning January 1 of last year. We got these done with these things by about, and they have to be done manually. We got done with these things about 1:30. The city of Missouri City was asking if we could mail them on Saturday, and I told them I had no way to do so because the mail center's not open, but if they wanted to come and get them and meter them themselves, they could do so. So that's what they did. But again, that was the responsibility was Missouri City's to get those apps to us.
Okay. With that, I will go to Linda. Justin, you wanted to add something to it?
Oh, yes, Judge. Just really quick, Justin Pfeiffer, County Attorney's Office, to Ms. Ginyard's point. And I don't know the specifics of this particular incident, but I just wanted to point out as a county that we were along with Harris and Travis, at the forefront of trying to expand vote by mail as much as possible and involved in several of those legal issues, and probably one of the most active counties. We certainly punched above our weight. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, I will come back to Linda. What was your point, ma'am?
Hello, can you? Okay. I just would like to say, first of all, I've enjoyed our meeting. Thank you for hosting it. I think moving forward, it would be helpful if we could meet either monthly or every couple of months so that these problems are solved before we get to another election. And I'd like to make sure that the election office has the adequate funding they need to perform their job. And I think that's something that the county can look at and see if they have everything they need at their disposal to perform their job. So that's my recommendation.
Absolutely. Your point is very well taken. I think John understands that Commissioner's Court is always willing to support our elections administration. And we always did that. The resources, and even above and beyond, we went to, when we went and got Smart Financial as a mega voting center, and also other location, extended the time and increasing our election workers' salary and all that stuff. We went and acquired, it's not even from taxpayer funding, we used that. We went and acquired some grants available, we did that. So we wanted to support, elections administration. One of the things is, sometimes we could say, oh, there is only 5 people or 2 people have this problem, but one person, it's about our constitutional right to vote. Cynthia just mentioned that one person is too many, and if they run into any kind of problem. With that, again, like we all said here, it's not about this is wrong or that is wrong. We are just looking into it, and we definitely will have meetings, not maybe monthly, but at least maybe a quarterly basis or something we will start with, and towards the election get closer, and so that we all can have an understanding what is going on. And so we all could express ourselves what is going on in Fort Bend County and what kind of preparation we have. But that is important. That is important. And I come from a planning background, and I come from we do all kind of planning, plan A and plan B, and if it doesn't work, plan C even. And so we prepare that. I mean, end of the day, this is one thing. After the fact, we could go and tell them, sorry, what happened, but the damage is already done. That's why we are having this conversation. We don't want, our district attorney rightfully mentioned, it is about accountability. It is about things get done in a right way. With that, I will possibly, if you don't have any if you don't have any more further questions, I have one thing. It's a follow-up. When we meet next time, and I will ask, I actually move our election administration, John Odom, election administrator, to provide a full written report of 2020 general election, the issues we experienced, and also the detailed listing of steps, including scheduled audits of the system to ensure similar errors do not happen. And I request this submitted to Election Commission within 30 days. That is my request, and if any final comment.
Did you mean 2021?
No, 2020. What happened in the past, what we learned from it, what issues we experienced, and what steps we are taking to address these issues. And if you need help from any other departments like IT, and they are willing to help you and work with you on all this stuff, but we like to see that so that we could come back with there should be some kind of a follow-up, and this is the follow-up I request we should move forward with. And is there any comment from our commission members?
Well, I think we just discussed it in detail, but
no, but it should be in writing, and that report should be in writing, and so that means we have something to move forward with, because we talked about it absolutely, and but that is my request.
And I certainly think that John should be given the opportunity to make the recommendations
absolutely
that he feels, because he knows things that we don't know.
Correct.
Because
absolutely.
we don't do the
absolutely.
job that
absolutely.
might help make it better, because let's accept the fact, y'all, this is where we are. It's not going to change in 2024. It won't change. We're going to have this, we've gained 50 pounds. We have to go out and buy a new wardrobe. Let me put it like that. Okay. Our clothes don't fit anymore. Yeah, I'm a good one to be talking about that. I got plenty gall, don't I? But yeah, we gained 50 pounds. We got to buy a new wardrobe. End of discussion there.
Madam Clerk, you wanted to say something? You are about to say something, I guess.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Judge. I just wanted to remind the commission that we are taking minutes, and this recording will be available if you would like to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So any other, Yes.
Hi, this is Robin with IT. I'd like to offer up some of the recommendations that I have, unless you feel that we should defer it to another meeting.
It is actually, probably I will ask you work with John, and also you could even say, please go ahead and say what you think we should. We are going to be discussing here, so go ahead, please.
Okay, so some of these we've kind of already spoken, but under IT, we have a project management office, and their sole responsibility is for managing projects. And so my recommendation, and we've mentioned it, is that the IT PMO team is involved, and not just them, but all of IT, from intake all the way to go live. What we typically do when we have a project that goes live, I've got people that are there in that office or department, and they are ensuring that everything is set up and ready to go. We've already tested it, and we've done all of that prep work prior to. One thing that I would have liked to have seen with this election is that we utilized a vendor more to do testing. John mentioned it, doing test mode, but we're receiving the equipment from the vendor, and their responsibility should be to go through and test that equipment, to stress test it, to make sure that thousands of users can go through that system without any issues. That's the expectation that I would have with any other vendor, any other software vendor that I encounter or work with. Another option or recommendation that I have is that the election technical support should be provided by IT. We have that experience to provide technical support. I believe Ms. Gingert mentioned that she wasn't aware that Fort Bend County had an IT department. And we do. We have about 59 people, and our sole focus is on technology. And we are the experts, and we've been appointed to be those experts by Commissioner's Court. And so I would want to have that responsibility for us to be able to make sure any technology issues are addressed through us.
And so one of the reasons why I completely agree with Robin, because, you know, we are not doing paper ballot anymore. And so obviously when we do the paper ballot, there is no IT need to get involved with that. But at the same time, we are talking about, we are checking in, we have computer machines sitting there, and they are the one registering your vote and all that stuff. And I think the technical aspect of it should be coordinated with our IT department. And John, without this technical thing, you have more than you can handle. So to me, if I am in your shoes, I like to delegate things to other people. I mean, that's all the discussion we are having here. So any other conversation? Please go ahead, District Attorney Brian Middleton, please.
I just wanted to add that very little has been said about the vendor and the product that the county purchased. The county spent a lot of money on this equipment and software, and there's some questions regarding that. And I think any review ought to include an assessment of suitability of all that was purchased. You know, a lot of that is legal, but there are a lot of different issues that we uncovered during this process, and that's just one of them. And another thing that I would suggest, and it was kind of suggested in this conversation, is that there should be an assessment of the number of people working for the election administration. I think we can infer from this conversation that they're severely understaffed. So I'm thinking going forward, we ought to have those independent audits to address both of those issues.
Completely.
We have the same people working that worked. We have the same number of people working that worked here when we had 250,000 voters as opposed to 490,000.
Yeah, that is the problem right there.
Issue with a bifurcated staff because our warehouse is in Sugar Land, and on a bad traffic day, my folks spend 2 hours going back and forth. So that takes away from work.
Yeah, and John's point is very well taken, because if you are working with the same number of staff, when you had 250,000 voters, now we have almost 500,000 voters. It's time to update. And it is important, and Commissioner's Court you need to bring it to Commissioner's Court. You know that I will support it. I don't think any commissioner is going to say, we don't need to give more money to John. And you need to come up with your plan, and we will support it. I will have advocates for you to support you, and so that you have enough staff to work. Because, you know, we are not a small county anymore. We are getting the new numbers when it come out. You will see we are close to 850,000 people. And so you will see our numbers going up to another 50,000 more people will be voting next election cycle. And that is 500, close to 540,000 people will be voting. So we need more people, we need more resources, and we have to invest, because election is one of our constitutional the basic of our constitution, and you know that's where we could exercise our rights. So it is important we invest money. And coming back to the vendor, and I personally, John, I will tell you, I don't think that vendor was responsive enough. When I go out and sell something, if something goes wrong, it is my responsibility to fix it in the first time. Okay, 2 years from now, it is a whole different discussion. But right now, this is the first cycle we used it, and I hope you are working with them and coordinate with IT department. They have to come up with absolute solution for this issue. We cannot deal with this in another election. And so with that, any further question, concern, otherwise we will conclude this meeting. And I appreciate you are taking at least, an hour and 38 minutes of your time from your busy schedule. When I say that 30 days, by January 18th, if we could, our understanding today is you're going to put together that by 30 days and present it to this commission, and we will have that conversation further. And once again, I just wanted to be very clear. All this conversation about providing the right, and we all know that voting is not a right. It is a right. I'm sorry, what I'm saying. Voting is a right, constitutional right, and it's not a privilege. That's what I meant to say. And so we have to do the best we can to provide, a better training for our staff. And John, one more thing. Before I conclude this, I will say this. Maybe 99% of our staff did a very good job. And I personally have conversations with many people. Yes. But some people were not enough inclusive. And that maybe anything we do, we will find some people, a handful of people. But that's where the training, we run into people who doesn't speak English. Maybe they are voting first time. They have no idea. They're not tech savvy. We have to be more compassionate to, and some incidents we had, but it is not a reflection of all our staff at all. And I just wanted to be very clear. With that, if anything else anybody wanted to add, otherwise we will conclude this meeting.
I'd like to thank you for the meeting, and I'd like to say it was very productive. Thank you for all of your work and help, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to all of you. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? I need a motion from one of our, and do I have a second?
Second.
And with no objection, this meeting is adjourned, and we will call another meeting soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are off the air. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.